And we would like to welcome John Rizvi to the program. He's known as the Patent Professor. He's an adjunct professor of patent law at Nova Southeastern Law School in Florida. And he is the author of 2 books on patents. And this morning, we are going to talk about patents, copyrights, and Chat GPT and AI. Good morning, John.
Good morning. Always a pleasure to be here.
So John, this is going very quickly. You know, the more that we hear about Chat GPT, AI generated content, even artwork, and that sort of thing. What in terms of patents do we need to know about, and or copyright protections?
Yeah, so, the most important thing is under the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, intellectual property, patents and copyrights are for limited times to authors and inventors. And that language is specifically in the Constitution. That's where we get the basis for all the intellectual property laws. And the question becomes, is a machine an author? Can a computer be an author of a work? And that's, I don't know if you recall, several years ago, there was the monkey selfie case where a monkey got a hold of a cell phone, took a bunch of selfies, the images became extremely valuable, and the owner of the cell phone tried to claim copyrights, and the court held that a monkey is not an author for purposes of the Constitution, and that you cannot have copyrights owned by a monkey. So this is kind of an unusual twist, and now, whether a robot or a computer can be entitled, something completely created by a machine, can that be entitled to copyright protection? And the answer is no.
And so some of these things, though, what I'm reading is, for some of them, it is a combination. So, in other words, there will be an author who actually generates the content, but the AI is, or the whatever it is, the robot is creating the artwork, and vice versa. So how does that work?
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point, and that's what the law is grappling with. For example, is the computer a tool? And when the computer becomes a tool, is it functioning kind of like a paintbrush? Like, nobody would deny a painter a copyright to a painting because he used a paintbrush, right? Like that would seem absurd.
Right.
There's a Supreme Court case way back in 1884 that held that photographers could get copyright protection for their photos, for pictures. And clearly a photographer uses a tool, a camera. And of course, as cameras get more and more sophisticated, the human input becomes less and less. I mean, they now have, clearly they can get rid of red eye, they can change shading, they can really, the amount of skill needed by the human to operate goes down. And that's where this recent case, the Zara of the Dawn, the author used AI to generate art. And the difference is that, in that case, the Copyright Office held that there's no copyright protection for that art because the human interaction was extremely limited and there was no control. Like, unlike a painter, you might use a paintbrush, but the painter is in control of the final product. The brush is just a tool. And the same thing with a camera. Yes, the camera is a tool that takes the picture, but there's a lot of control the photographer has. He's holding the camera. He's now, aiming it, directing it, choosing the time, working with the lighting. So there's a lot of ongoing, the Copyright Office used the term iterative control that the author has. Now, the less control an author has, and the more the tool or the machine or the robot, the more that the machine does, and the less the human does, that's when it becomes problematic. And in this case, they use this AI tool called Mid-Journey that creates images, but there's no way for an author to edit the image after it's created. There's no input. You're stuck with the results that are delivered. And in that case, it was a clear case where the computer was doing all of the so-called creative work. There's really very little on the part of the human, and in that case it was denied. There's no copyright protection for computer-generated artwork.
Well, my question with that one would be, and this I believe was was it a cartoon or a comic, I guess? Anyway, my question with that one would be, doesn't the AI or robot have to have a description of some sort generated by the writer that describes said person in comics? And so therefore isn't that sort of murky there? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, and I know exactly what you're saying. So the creativity is in the input, right? So that was the author's argument, is that, hey, listen, choosing what terms to put in is where the creativity comes in. And unfortunately, because this particular app, Midjourney, it specifically has a user's guide that says it doesn't understand words, grammar, or intent the same way as a human does. The results are generated more or less randomly based on the input, and they didn't feel that input had enough control over the output. It may be different in a case of, you mentioned ChatGPT. So with ChatGPT, a big difference is when you get the final, and just for the benefit of some of your listeners, ChatGPT is a new tool that allows basically the computer to write sentences, content in response to a natural language text. But the difference is when you get that content written, the author is permitted to edit it, revise it, make changes. So it's really used, you can use it as a first draft and then put some human creativity into the final product. And it doesn't take a lot. The amount of creativity to get a copyright is low, but it's not zero. And in the case of the Zara of the Dawn, it seemed as if the human creativity was really very close to zero. And the big distinction might be there's no way using that application, Midjourney, there's no way to edit the images once they're presented. I think the case would be different if the author took the images that were there, used Photoshop or some other program to make changes to it, even if they're minor changes, then they've put in the human creativity needed, even if all you're doing is revising the work created by a computer. But if you take the work created entirely by the computer, you don't revise it, you don't edit it, you don't make any changes, then that's different than somebody using ChatGPT to write an essay for them, but then they go back and add headings and revise the text and add an intro or somehow involve themselves as a human in the creativity. That's where ChatGPT is different than this particular case regarding Midjourney.
Thanks for explaining that. But now, John, aren't we just on the tip of the iceberg when it comes to copyright and patents for artificial intelligence generated art, literature, and that sort of thing? I mean, do you foresee some laws changing as a result?
Oh, absolutely. Like anytime there's a new technology, there's this huge lag before laws change, and it's not even necessarily laws. For example, Amazon is currently the largest bookseller in the world, does not have any restrictions on books written via ChatGPT. There's no requirement even that an author reveal that ChatGPT has been used to write a book. Like, my prediction is that's going to change because ultimately consumers are going to demand to know which books are written by an author versus which are generated exclusively via ChatGPT. Because so laws change. I mean, when drones first came out, there's no restriction on where you could fly a drone. There were people, the early adopters were flying drones at state parks and getting unbelievable coverage at national state parks, and then finally the laws caught on, and it was like, hey, wait, we can't, and now you're not permitted to do that. So anytime you have a new technology, there is this lag, And I think we're seeing that with copyright law right now.
So I write something, or I have the computer write an essay for me, and I hand it in. Will there be the capabilities kind of like Shazam was when somebody can enter that and it'll look out about the vast world and go, nope, that's already been written. It was written by Daryl over in Blanket. You cheated. Is that going to be possible?
Yeah. It's a huge, the implications to education are incredible. Like plagiarism. How do teachers find out even there's new apps being developed to help identify when ChatGPT has been used. But that's going to be a completely, game-changing app in terms of teaching writing and analytical thinking. I think it's going to be a huge loss in terms of people developing cognitive skills. I mean, and sometimes that's just the nature of what technology does. Like I have teenagers that have trouble reversing their car if the rear view camera is not working, right? Like we grew up without rear view cameras, so we've developed that skill. We don't need, if the rear view camera doesn't work, we're still able to function. If some of these safety features, they're great as long as they work, but if you don't have side view, so that if you're changing lanes, like, the way the blind spot detectors, if you don't have that in your vehicle and you've never developed the skill to look in both mirrors, then you're in trouble. And we're going to see that with the advent of the smarter computers get and the more sophisticated ChatGPT gets. It's the writing skills and cognitive thinking and analytics is going to suffer as a result. And there's, unless there's some way for educators and teachers to get around that. I mean, I possibly even see a lot more writing assignments where the teacher can make sure, the professor can make sure that students are not using ChatGPT.
Yeah, you're going to have to write it in hand with your own handwriting in the class.
Yeah, that's new is, or that's old is new again. You might see something going back to handwritten essays again. So a lot of schools stopped teaching script and cursive.
That's right.
But who knows in terms of how the educational system is going to adapt to preventing cheating and making sure that students really learn those analytical skills. That might be one way where handwritten essays make a comeback, at least in the educational environment.
I was going to ask you this. You're a professor. Have you already experienced students using ChatGPT, or that you know of?
I haven't, because again, for law school, the exams are always in person, no computers. They use blue books, handwritten examinations. It has impacted a lot of professors, including myself. I would hesitate now in the at-home assignments, right? Because that's something where I have no control over whether someone's using ChatGPT. At this point, it's not sophisticated enough that a student can rely entirely on it. But I just like the level playing field of having a pen and a booklet and a closed environment room, and then everyone's got the same opportunity.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much. It has been an interesting conversation. We've been speaking this morning to John Rizvi. He is known as the patent professor. He's an adjunct professor of patent law at Nova Southeastern Law School in Florida. And John, is there a place our listeners may go to find you online?
Yes, the Patent Professor is our website, but Instagram, Facebook, anywhere on all social media, our handle is the Patent Professor.
All right, John Rizvi, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.